two videos, one on fascism and one on imperialism, and I thought it would be very interesting to compare the two. And what better test subject than the Galactic Empire? But before we start, I'm going to waste your time by telling how I got this idea. Some time ago I came across an article online stating that the Empire was very bad and it was not acceptable to have sympathies for it. In this article there was this unforgettable sentence: "You cannot support the Empire unless you consider fascism a legitimate form of government." It is incredible how much stupidity a journalist can put in one sentence. And it was a professional journalist, paid to write this shit, not a fan blog. First, fascism is not a form of government. A republic is a form of government. A monarchy is a form of government. Fascism is an ideology. Ideologies do have preferences in the matter of the government form. Fascism favors autocratic form of government, such as a monarchy or a dictatorship. But not necessarily. In theory, it is possible to have a fascist republic, for instance. The legitimacy of a government is not a matter of personal opinion. A government is legitimate as long as it can maintain itself. In Star Wars, the Republic was the legitimate government and was overthrown by the Empire, who then became the new legitimate government. And what the rebels did was waging a war to become the new legitimate government. That is how government legitimacy works. Let's start a comparison, shall we? The fascist ideology placed the nation above all else. National interests supersede everything else. What fascism asks is commitment. An empire aims to impose its order on the world. What an empire asks is allegiance. In a fascist state, a strong national unity is required, so a fascist society aims to be very monocultural and homogeneous. In the other hand, an empire will grow and absorb many peoples and nations, all living under the same political order, so an empire tends to be very multicultural and proselyte. It is not impossible for an imperial power to be fascist, but it is very difficult. I will explain this more in detail later. Now, if we look at the Galactic Empire, there are many cultures and species living in it, so it is multicultural. Does the multiple culture and species are forced to assimilate into an imperial culture? No. So the Galactic Empire is not ethnocentric, it's proselyte. On the fundamentals, the Galactic Empire is not fascist. A fascist state needs an uniform and centralized political order in order to ensure national unity. Empires tend to have many layers of administrative order between the core, the colonial territories, protectorates, and client states, multiform and decentralized. The Galactic Empire is divided into sectors ruled by morphs and planets ruled by appointed imperial governors. It is unclear if on the planets the inhabitants, especially non-human ones, keep their own laws and governments. For instance, Tatooine is ruled by the Hutt, but the Emperors can freely intervene. It is not completely clear, but the Imperial Order seems mostly uniform. Both fascist and imperial societies are militaristic, but for different reasons. A fascist state is militaristic in order for the nation to be strong. In a fascist society, you are expected to serve and fight for the nation. It is an army of conscripts. In peacetime, there is no need for a huge military because there is little chance of a province seceding or a vassal state becoming rebellious. Empires need a permanent standing military because an empire is often confronted with rebellious vassals that require a military intervention and defending the borders. Imperial armies are peacekeeping forces that are sent away from home for a long time. That requires a professional army. The chapter on the military would deserve a video on its own, but we need to go on. The Galactic Empire army is a professional army. Soldiers do it for a job, and the Imperial army is dealing mainly with unrests and rebellions. We saw them here and there intervening to maintain order and defending the borders against rebels. Very much an imperial peacekeeping force.
This is difficult because there isn't a prescribed form of government for an empire or fascist state. Out of necessity, a strong government is required, but not necessarily an autocratic government, with a dictator. France and Britain had huge colonial empires, but were not dictatorship. Fascism tends to create leaders that embody national unity, but a fascist state could exist without one. The role of a leader in fascism is more spiritual than administrative. Neither Hitler or Mussolini held absolute power, as Stalin did, especially Mussolini, who was restricted by a council and the King of Italy. Palpatine is the emperor, he is a monarch. He is not a leader who embodies national unity, because there isn't one. The Galactic Empire is not a nation, but a multicultural imperial state. He doesn't appear much in public, doesn't make a lot of speeches, and much of the decisions were delegated to his underlings, Vader, Tarkin, the Moffs, Imperial Council. For the average liberal, if you are not a race egalitarian, you are a fascist. But what the average liberal doesn't understand is that racial equality exists only in liberalism and socialism. An empire is never egalitarian. You won't grant the same rights you give to your citizen to the conquered people. That would be absurd and dangerous, by the way. However, if conquered people continuously show their loyalty to the empire, they will be progressively included in the political and military structure of the empire. An empire is inclusive. Some empires were more inclusive than others. Alexander the Great's empire was very inclusive, the Roman Empire less, and the European colonial empires even less. In a very monocultural society, like a fascist society, it is not legitimate for someone from a different culture to hold any power or responsibility in the country. A fascist society is exclusive. The Galactic Empire is human-dominated, but there is always a dominant population in an empire, the people that found the empire. In Star Wars, humans seem to constitute the majority of the population of the galaxy, so it is logical to see more humans than non-humans. Also, the military is a standardized institution. Adjusting the equipment to every species would not be cost-effective. Neither would it be cost-effective for the filmmaker. Costumes are not cheap. The early films were human-focused. Aliens are only present when it is relevant to the plot. Tatooine, Chewbacca, Yoda, the Ice Monster, the Ewok, the Bounty Hunters, but nothing much. Jabba wasn't featured as a Hutt at first. He was human. Anyway, there is examples of the Empire being inclusive, most notably with Thrawn or Mas Amedda. The Imperial Senate, until it was dissolved, still represented the different species and planet of the Empire, so the Galactic Empire was inclusive. Blowing up Alderaan and genociding the Geonosian. The guy who wrote the article that incited me to make this video didn't know about the Geonosian genocide. Even me, who is not a big Star Wars fan, knew about this, so it gave you an idea how much a journalist knows about the subject he writes on. Anyway, it is Tarkin who took the decision to destroy Alderaan, to show the power of the Death Star, and terrorize the galaxy. It was Tarkin's character, not an imperial policy of blowing up planets, for fun. The Geonosians were exterminated, because Geonosis was the building place of the Death Star. They wanted to keep it a secret. If there were Geonosians living somewhere in the galaxy, they would not have been targeted because they would not have known anything. Besides, almost all empires have raised cities because their inhabitants were recurringly rebellious. For a galactic-sized empire, it is not just cities, but planets. Now, if a fascist government exterminates a population, it is because they are confronted with a population that cannot be assimilated and too troublesome to expel, so the remaining option is to kill them off. Reason very specific to the fascist ideology. The Galactic Empire acted very much like any regular empire. So the Galactic Empire is definitely not fascist. I said in the beginning of the video that it is very difficult for an empire to be fascist. Maybe now you understand why. In order for people to tolerate or accept the domination of an empire, it helps greatly to be multicultural, inclusive, and politically multiform. If you want to remain a monocultural, exclusive, and politically uniform empire, you need to force assimilate the population you conquer or exterminate them. Both endeavors are time-consuming and costly. Full assimilation takes at least 2 generations. Exterminating is usually faster, but the conquered lands need to be repopulated, and it takes even more time for them to be productive again. Not to mention that neighboring countries will become very worried.